practice is the absolute most contrived thing that you can do. It's the most contrived thing you can do. Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges is since you're practicing, how can you truly practice since practice is contrived? And then the goal of any musician is to sound organic. You don't want it to sound contrived when you're playing. Right, you want it to sound natural and flowing and free and organic. Like one thing logically goes right into the next thing, and it just, that's what you want it to sound like. But we know that it takes a lot of contrived practice to give us the ability to sound that way.
Exactly.
It takes a lot of stuff. And so I tell people, hey, since practice is contrived, since it's totally contrived, you might as well be even more contrived with it. Yeah. So getting down to very specific things, one thing that Wynton used to do, Wynton Marsalis, mm-hmm. is when he was coming up, he would spend very short periods of time, 15, 20 minutes, working on very specific things, and then go to the next thing. And that was one of the concepts that my dad instilled in me. And so I would spend a lot of time practicing, short things, practice this scale. Okay, I got that scale. All right, now I'll switch from that to practicing something else. Because we know that the way that our brain works is that we really can't practice for extended periods of time at full focus.
Oh, right.
Level. It's not possible.
Yeah.
And especially with what they put in the food now, especially with, the way that everything is fast, short attention spans, all of that kind of stuff. And nothing to really grow an attention span, seemingly, So there are some people that can practice long periods of time in one sitting and be productive, but not usually.
No.
So I always tell my students, break up your practice. Okay, if you have to practice 3 hours, doing 1.5 hours and really specific, chunk of 1.5 hours, real specific, and then another chunk for 1.5 hours.
Sure. Yeah.
That really helps. There was a comment. I've got this thing, and I'll add you to this so that you can start getting these. I've got these things called Lesson of the Week.
Oh, okay.
And a lesson of the week is it's a video clip of one of my lessons.
Oh, right. And
a little short specific thing that I'm talking about. And the one that I did for last week was on the 14th, actually. Someone wrote in and said that, no wonder jazz doesn't, no one wants to listen to jazz. That's the kind of comment. And what I want to say, I put a comment on my YouTube about that. But what's interesting is that a lot of people have this idea that you can practice scales, but you shouldn't practice patterns, or you shouldn't practice, you shouldn't be that contrived with your practice, because if you're that contrived with your practice, then your performance will sound contrived.
Right.
And although that does seem to have its own kind of sense,
right.
The problem is if we're talking about trying to master our instrument so that when we have ideas, that the ideas don't surprise us and that we can play those ideas. If I only practice scales in one way, if that's the only way I practice them, then that's all I'll be able to play. So in other words, if what I'm able to play fits in this container right here, this is all my playing ability. If I have any ideas that are outside of this, I can't play them.
Yeah.
So I'm spontaneous within that. That's the level of my spontaneity. But if I can play all of this stuff, then I can be spontaneous within all of that.
Yeah.
People talk about being outside of the box thinkers. Oh man, he's outside of the box. She's outside of the box. No, outside of the box only says that there's a bigger box than you thought there was.
Right.
That's really what outside of the box really means.
That's true.
So if you tell somebody or if somebody says to you it's okay to practice scales, but anything past that sounds contrived, anything shouldn't practice patterns. What do you think a scale is?
Yeah.
It's a pattern.
Yeah, boring pattern. But
It's a pattern.
Yeah.
And so you might as well develop the patterns that you can play, so that if you have those ideas, that you can play them. Now, I'm not an advocate for learning a bunch of patterns and then contrived patterns and then just plugging them in,
right, yeah,
like you're being spontaneous. I'm not for that at all.
Right.
I'm for mastering the instrument, so that if you have an idea that's along the lines of a pattern that you've already practiced, that you'll be able to play it.
That's right.
That's my philosophy on that.